Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the vastness of the galaxy. I'm Rockin' Larry Locken with Pleiadian Express Production with my co-host Jane Hermstad in the land of the midnight all-time sun, Norway. Tonight on our show, we have a special guest, Irish author Sean Courtney. Sean is going to talk about his book, Alien Invasion, which was actually split up into two parts, two books, and we're just going to get into it right now and start discussing some of the things surrounding it and how it came about. First of all, Jane, how are you doing?
I'm great, Larry. How are you?
And I'm doing very good. I'm really excited. We've been, of course, waiting for quite a while to get Sean on, and it just seems like we haven't all three been able to connect at the same time. But without further ado, Sean, I'd like to welcome you to the show all the way from Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So nice to be here.
Well, great, absolutely. And I've been looking forward to really talking about your book and, seeing what we can discuss and seeing how we can help get the information out there to the people, and we can get into all that. But Jane, I know that you had a series of questions that you would like to kick off, and I think that you should go with it.
Yes, first of all, I want everybody to know really, how you came up with the title of the book.
Well, it was originally called Crystal, Jane, because the story was inspired by crystals I used to find on the beach in Kerry in Ireland, and it just gave me an idea. It was something kind of in my head for a long, long time about focusing mental energy through crystals. I don't think I think it was a kind of an idea that was kicked around before, but I saw it in a different light. I thought that it could be um, used, let's say, with meditation and self-empowerment, and crystals could enhance that. So I decided to write a fantasy about the whole idea of meditation and self-empowerment, and the use of crystals again to enhance that. So I wound the story around a group of young people who were fighting back against an alien invasion. So in due course, the book changed its title to Alien Invasion, but we'll get back to that again. So at present it's called Alien Invasion, but as I say, inspired by crystals, and I would call it a fantasy on, as I say, meditation and self-empowerment.
I wonder why you chose young people in your book.
Well, I was writing a very serious story, an adult novel, and I had a period when it became a little bit too bleak for me, and I needed a rest. And I had this kid story in my head for a long, long time. So just as light relief, I decided to write a few chapters of this kid's story. When I say kids, it's kind of a thing. It could be from 10 to 18, or it could be kids, the kid in all of us. That's the kind of thing I was thinking about. You know, the way Harry Potter, for instance, appeals to people across all ages, something in that line. But essentially, a story featuring young people. And I don't give them ages, actually. I leave it to the reader to decide how old they are. So one reader might decide they're maybe 12. Some other readers might decide they're 16, 17, whatever. Doesn't matter. I don't tie them down. But as long as they're capable of doing what they do. Anyway, I wrote 3 chapters of this story, and then I put it aside and got back to my serious novel. I finished my serious novel, and I sent it away to an agent. But while I was preparing it, a thought came into my head: send a kid's story as well. I did, and The serious novel really didn't get much attention, but I got serious interest from a literary agent in London who loved the kid's story and said, "Can we read the rest?" So I rang her and said, "Well, I've only written the 3 chapters, but if you're interested, I can finish it." And I imagined it would be maybe about 6 months, 200 pages, something like that. But this story seemed to take on a life of its own. I lost control of it completely. It would only move at its own pace, and it kept growing and growing and growing and growing. Eventually, it ended up being over 500 pages on my computer. And it just, as I say, would just move at its own pace. I couldn't push it. I couldn't force it. It just worked its own way out rather than I working it out. And eventually, it wasn't complete until 4 years later. At that point, I sent it to the agent, and unfortunately, she had retired. Now, to get an agent once is doing well. To get an agent twice would be miraculous. Couldn't find another agent, so I eventually published it on Amazon. And there it lies today.
Sean, if I could ask you for just a minute, without giving away too much of the story, when you say alien invasion, are these kids having to band together per se in some kind of a way to defend themselves against an onslaught or to fight off, say, an alien invasion? How does that? I know you don't really, we don't want to give away the story, but is that kind of the gist of it a little bit, or?
Well, Earth is invaded by very, very powerful aliens who take over the world in a matter of hours.
Okay.
They're just far superior in weaponry and so on, and power. And a matter of hours, the whole Earth is taken over. And it looks hopeless. It looks completely hopeless. And these aliens decide to corral the whole world into small groups. So, for instance, my kids live where I live, in Killarney, and the area where they live is, as I say, like a corral where they can only go maybe in a 3 mile radius, 3 or 4 mile radius. And that's how the aliens maintain their power, by cutting off contact between other peoples. So it looks hopeless, but these friends band together and say, we have to do something. And it sounds, there's a lot of scoffing and laughing and what can we do? And we're hopeless. I mean, if all the armies of the world are dissolved and all the weapons destroyed, and anyway, if the weapons were there, they would be useless against these aliens, and what's the point? But the idea prevails, better to do something than nothing. And then these kids try out a few little adventures, and it proves difficult, and they nearly break up. But then they have a little bit of success, just a little bit of success, and it encourages them, and then they get stronger. But it all turns around when another alien appears on the scene. The main character in the story is called Dara, and Dara is out on his bicycle one day, and in an interesting kind of a way, he meets an alien called Pert. Her full name is Pertamaciel, but in short, Pert. She's Pert throughout the story. And this is a very, very, very special person. She comes from a very distant galaxy, but she's got very special powers. So Dara immediately thinks, okay, maybe this is the person who can help free the Earth. But it's an unusual thing. She's kind of on, I don't know what you call it in your part of the world, but the kids in school here get a year kind of off where they do other interesting things or other educational things, and transition year.
Right,
And so she's kind of on a transition year, and she's sent to observe what's happening on Earth, and she's not supposed to get involved. But she does a few tricks nonetheless to impress Dara or whatever, and they become friends. And a lot of things evolve from that meeting. But she does tell him that he can achieve these powers because every creature in the universe has these powers, but they don't know about them. They can find these powers within them, but it takes patience, perseverance, and a lot of concentration. But Dara doesn't have time for all of this. But eventually, he realizes this is the only chance he has. He has to develop these powers that Perth possesses. So he works on it. And bit by bit, this is what brings the story on. It suddenly empowers this group of young people. They get a chance to do something real.
So they're living in kind of a controlled anarchy type of system under the control of these aliens, sort of maybe like a, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World meets War of the Worlds. And it sounds like, too, that they've been cut off from remembering they have these powers that you're speaking of. Is that kind of the case? They may have possessed these powers at one time, but in order to stay conquered, that it's kind of been shut off from their memory.
Well, the idea is that you have to rise to a level of consciousness to regain or to achieve the powers that are already there, powers that are locked in. And I do believe this is quite true to some extent. As I said, the story is a bit of a fantasy on this thing, in that it's taken forward much more quickly than we could evolve to. But there are built-in meanings in the story. On the one hand, it's a yarn, but on the other hand, there are a lot of, let's say, subtle hidden messages that relate mostly to the value of meditation and also the whole idea of self-empowerment. So I would see the book as an encouragement to young people to meditate. Just like David Lynch, for instance, the movie director, wants to bring meditation to young people across the world, and he reckons that troubles and crime and so on would reduce if more young people would meditate, But in the book, it's not in your face. It's very, very subtle. It's all just buried deeply in the story. There's nothing that jumps out at you like this, but at the same time, you're not going to miss it, I think,
Yeah, it sounds like one of the stories that could keep you riveted a couple times. Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like one of those stories that could keep you riveted a couple times through to, go back through and, oh, did I miss this last time? And, oh, so that's what it meant. Yeah, it just sounds very fascinating, and it really speaks to, I think, the situation humanity's in right now, too, with regaining full consciousness and trying to awaken. So I really think this is the perfect time for something like this to have came out. Yeah. And I'm intrigued by it big time now.
Well, Perth makes it clear to Dara from the start that you cannot use these powers aggressively. You cannot just use them to blow spaceships out of the sky or something like that, or kill aliens or whatever. It has to be worked in a different way. It has to bring you to a place that will bring freedom, but not through violence. And all the way through the story, that's the way the powers are achieved and built upon, but there's never any violence to the powers. It's just really a case of intuition and enhanced intuition through the powers that Dara gradually achieves. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to outwit the aliens, but never, ever through violence. Okay?
But it's a scary story. When I read the book, um, yeah, you asked me if I could read the book, and I was thinking like, oh my God, science fiction. Oh, I hated that. I hated all the films and science fiction. It was just, yeah, fiction. So I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get through this book and without being bored to death? And well, I got started, and I found it very intriguing to begin with. It started very soft and smooth and describing all the details, and uh, it just kept me going. I couldn't put it down. I don't know what happened to me because I had this resent of reading the book. I've never ever read any science fiction books or seen any science fiction films because not in that way that it's negative vibrations, but it always used to scare me, and I didn't like that feeling. And in the beginning of the story, when the spaceship is coming and that's really scary because you don't know if this is nice or if this is going to be something horrible. So it scared me. The story scared me to begin with, uh, and the hidden messages is going all through the book. And you said that. I think that was to calm me down, Sean, at one point because I was scared and worried and angry and I was crying and I was constantly calling Sean all the way to Ireland and asking, do you remember? I was asking you, why are you doing this? How are you going to get them out of this situation? I was
Yeah,
so upset.
yeah, because Jane was the first to read the story, and she kind of got it in serialized form. When she got it first, it wasn't complete, and to be honest, I didn't know how it was going to end at that time, because as I said, the story just actually it just wrote itself. I felt like at times I had no control over it. It was just like I was sometimes like I was dictating something.
Yeah,
And I
through
know
con.
I Yeah, and I got myself into a terrible tangle because I brought the story to a point and I said, "Oh my God, how am I going to finish this? How am I going to get out of this situation I've created?" And I just rested upon it. That's all I can say that I did that was positive because it really needed an ending that worked properly and wasn't artificial and that fitted in and so on and so forth. And at one point, it looked impossible. It looked absolutely impossible to me. But then one day, I was just walking in the national park here, which I live beside. Beautiful place with lakes and mountains and forests, and my dog beside me. And just for a moment, I found my mind going silent. And then ding, 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 ding. Boom. The ending came to me. I wasn't even
You
thinking
had
about it.
that aha moment. You answered my next question. So in that moment, you had that aha moment that day.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't believe what was that. It was like a miracle. I just couldn't. Beforehand, I couldn't even think of any idea of an ending that would fit with this. I was saying, how am I going to do this? And then suddenly, I just said, I wasn't even thinking of the story. And bang, 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 it just all came together. And that amazed me. It just absolutely amazed me. I
Sean,
felt like, okay, this wasn't my doing. It just happened.
if you could think back, Sean, you know about how long that you had that rest period before it came to you, and can you remember about how long that might have been?
Sorry, how do you mean, Larry?
Like, how long were you struggling when you first started to think, gosh, gee, I don't know how I'm going to end this? And between that time and say that aha moment you had that day on that walk,
oh,
I mean, about how long do you think?
oh, I'd say at least 2 months, but even before that, as I was still writing, I said, "My God, I've got myself into a tangle here. I've taken it so far. Maybe I'm going to have to go back and go down a different avenue or something." Um, so for about 4 months, I was in a tangle. I was still writing in the same direction I was going, but at the same time, uh, I said, "Oh, I'm really going down a road I can't see an end to." And then for about 2 months, I was just doing corrections and revisions and so on, and putting off and procrastinating about the end. And then, as I said, I had my moment. And I was very near a place called Muckross Abbey, an old uh, an old abbey that had been closed down centuries ago, but a beautiful ruin today. And then suddenly, it just all came to me. The whole scenario of the finish. And I said, oh, Eureka, Eureka, I found it, I've got the whole thing. And it just came from absolutely nowhere. I wasn't even thinking about it. So if that answers your question,
When did you start writing the book?
when?
Yeah, is that?
Oh, it's about oh, it's about almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I was living by the sea at the time in a mobile home, and it was a beautiful place and quite a happy place for me to be. Very pleasant. I was very close to the Atlantic Ocean, and it was like a nice community situation there. But as I said, most of my writing at the time was this serious novel and some other stuff as well. This kid story was kind of just a by the way until this agent took an interest. Just a bit unfortunate, as I say, she retired before it was finished. Whatever, it's out there, it's available, it's on Amazon. I'd love to have it in print form, but it's not in that style yet. I hope it'll come.
Yeah,
Why
I
crystals,
see a
Sean?
movie maybe manifesting
Yeah,
someday. No, go
yeah,
ahead.
I really saw a movie as well. That's what I said to Sean. I would like to see this in a book form that you can buy in the stores and you can watch it in a movie. But first of all, see it in book form and have people to buy it and read it because that's an experience in and of itself. Um, but why crystals, Sean? Why crystals? What did you know anything about crystals before? The energy or
Well, I always thought there was something special about crystals. I already had a book about healing through crystals, and I had another large book about all the different types of crystals found and so on. Now, I was no expert, but uh, I had a friend called Fabienne from Marseille, and she was very, very keen on crystals, and she said she used to find them in various places along the coastline. But she had a saying that, I mean, I think anybody familiar with crystals will know this one. She said, "You don't find the crystal finds you." So you don't go digging for them. But she told me that in certain parts of the beach, you would find small crystals in the pebbles. So you find a pebble bank, and if you look carefully, you find these tiny little beautiful crystals. And every now and then, you're very lucky, you find a lovely clear crystal. And I found lots of these. And so when the kid's story was in my head, I was thinking of the self-empowerment thing. And then it just dawned on me about the whole idea of focusing the energy through a crystal to enhance it. Does that answer your question, Shane?
Yes, and how did you combine meditation to crystals? Was that easy for you? Did you know anything about that? Why did you connect these two
Well,
things?
that comes from the, as I said, the friendly alien part. And she's a student, as I say. She's about the same age as Dara, albeit from a completely different background and culture, a culture that has developed intrinsic powers long before. And, she tells Dara about these powers, but one thing she admires in humans that she reckons her own people don't fully appreciate is the whole idea of intuition. She reckons that Earth people have great intuition, and she sees this reflected in Dara. Uh, so, as a student, she has developed the powers, but she still needs a crystal to focus the powers through, to enhance the powers. Now, further down the road, you won't need the crystal, but she is the student. And Dara becomes likewise this kind of spiritual student, if you like. Although, as I say in the book now, there's nothing, um, there's nothing that says spiritual. There's nothing that says meditation. I don't even use the word meditation once, I think. Focusing, going within, finding the powers within. So the crystal isn't absolutely necessary for the powers, but it's just simply when the student is, uh, let's say, in the learning process, the crystal helps to enhance the power. That was the idea. Okay?
You haven't said anything about your background. Could you tell us a little bit about your background as a writer?
Well, I have published a number of books, but mostly in the area of, let's say, oh, commercial kind of stuff. Like, for instance, I've produced books on sport and history and general affairs. Uh, as I say, mostly as a paid prospect. You do it as a contract, something in that line. But I've mostly worked in journalism throughout my life. I work, I work freelance now, editing books. But for many years, I worked with newspapers and magazines and edited several of them. That was my main area.
So, Sean, when you look back on this experience of how it first started and everything, does it really start to really hit you how the scenery of where you were living at the time and just the little synchronicities that happened really played into the motivation and the inspiration for writing this book? I mean, because it sounds to me like it was something that you typically, even though you were heavily always involved in journalism, it sounds like something that wasn't really maybe your forte to write about. So in looking back on it, like in hindsight, do you see all these things as playing into the motivation and the inspiration that gave you, the consciousness to write something like this?
Yeah, well, it was a mixture of a lot of things, Larry. It was, on the one hand, writing a fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
but a fantasy with meaning. So, in other words, I want to write a good story. I hope a story that entertains, but also I hope, as I say, a story with some meaning. Um, I put it like this: that I think a lot of stuff is written for just titillation, with nothing behind it. Anything there for me? Or was it just really a story to entertain me? Well, I was trying to do both. I was trying to write a story that entertained and also one that had some meaning. Also, I wanted to include the world and the universe. So the story is not confined. It starts off, the kids I'm writing about live where I live now. Uh, and this is a beautiful part of the world. So that comes out in the story. But then they also travel around the world as the story develops. And then they travel through the universe as the story further develops.
I think two
So
questions.
I've tried to bring in everything I could into it, as well as even towards the end of the story, there are black holes and wormholes, and
Right.
there are distant planets, and just really, I mean, how we know so much about black holes, and well, we know so much about black holes, very little about wormholes. But
Right.
even so, our knowledge is extremely limited. But I just like to use the imagination too to see how these situations might come together. Because as Einstein said, uh, knowledge is one thing, but imagination is greater.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just, I'm getting riveted just hearing about this. And I think it sounds like you really did a good job tying all these things in together, the universe, the environment, the cosmos. I think a couple questions, vague ones that come to mind are, is there any particular timeline referred to in this book, a future, past, distant? And also, I wanted to ask you, does it say anywhere in the book or allude to what these extraterrestrials might have looked like if they were humanoid, reptilian, or anything of that nature?
Well, the aliens that invade the Earth are so wrapped up in gear, it's very hard to actually put a full picture on them. But it does turn out that Dara and the group end up on a. These aliens are called Zerds, incidentally. And Dara and his group end up on a Zerd ship. They've kind of stowed aboard because they're trying to find answers, and they're trying. But I wouldn't like to actually tie it down to anything particular. Uh, it's let's say a vague description. Parrot Part is interesting. Part can be anything she wants to be. Ordinarily, she looks like a person from Earth. Uh, Quite a pretty girl, maybe about 15, 16. As I say, it depends on what age the reader wants to put on her. Just that she is very young. But she can change shape to anything she wants. So is she just changing to Earth shape to suit the people she's with, or does she look like something else? She changes into all sorts of things throughout the story. And then there are other aliens called Boreans who come to the aid of Dara and his group. Uh, they're rather humanoid, but they with small differences. Uh, I try not to go in too much into description because what I want the reader to do is use his or her imagination to put a picture on this for themselves, use their own
Yeah.
images. I don't want to dictate. I don't even put ages on anybody. I just want the reader to just work it out for themselves, whatever they think. Like for instance, when you hear somebody, a presenter on the radio, and we always somehow or other work out some kind of a mental image of this person. And then
Yes,
if we see a picture, this person looks completely different to the mental image we had. Now,
always.
okay, when people are reading this book, I want them to work it out for themselves. Let them see them however they want.
Oh, I like
So I
that
just give
idea. I love that.
vague ideas, and then it's up to. In other words, I'd say I want the reader actually to be a creator in reading this book. I don't want to dictate to them what everything is. Let them decide themselves in the course of the story.
I would
Yeah,
love
That makes sense, Larry?
yeah, it sounds like you really help people to open up their imagination, and you're right. You're giving a basis here of a great story, and you're letting people decide and figure some of this stuff out for themselves. Versus as far as their ages go, a timeline goes, and things of that nature. It sounds so exciting. It sounds like every step of the way, the book is like that, and the way the story's told. It stays unfocused yet, but the small little innate things are left to the reader to figure out. And yeah, I'm really getting a good feeling from that. I like that. No, sorry, go ahead, Jane. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I have a clear picture of the aliens and how they look like. So I would really like to discuss those images with someone else who read the book besides Sean, that is, which I never did. Did I? I don't think so. But I would
No.
really like to discuss with another reader how they see the aliens, how they would describe them, because in my imagination, in my head, I have a clear picture of how they look like.
Well,
But
that's
that's
great,
And it's probably nothing
Jane,
like
but
Jane. It's probably nothing
you
like I'm
picked your
thinking.
own. Sorry.
No, I would, though I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sean. I was just going to say, yeah, as much as I'd like for Jane to tell me, I want to read this book myself, and I want to get my own mind made up and, kind of figure out what I think that they look like. And then maybe Jane and I can definitely compare notes on that. And I suppose if I were to tie it down to a hominoid or a reptilian or something like that, Jane, that would be far too vague compared to what your mind's thinking of, right?
Are you insinuating that I have a weird mind? No, it's just
Well, I'm just saying it's expansive.
yeah, vivid imagination, you could say,
Yes.
added to Sean's words. Um, uh, I felt that um, this aliens was scary in one part, but not as scary in the other part. But tall, big, um, voracious, yeah, scary, powerful, and by mind also very powerful. That's my image and my thoughts when it
Well,
comes.
did they seem less scary to you as the story went on? I mean, without getting too much into it, as you got more familiar with the story, did it seem like they became less scary in that regard, or?
No, never, because that's when I called Sean and I was so upset because I was scared. I was scared, like I was trembling. It sounds really weird because I hardly ever get scared of anything. Um, so um, I would be very upset when I called him because he was putting these kids into this distress, in this stress situation, um, as they were so superior to these aliens. And where is the story taking me? And I would not be like to be interrupted by anyone around me whilst I was reading this book, because I was in a hurry to get to a nice moment. I didn't like the peaks that Sean was telling me about. He said, yeah, but you just have to keep on reading. It gets better. And then when he said gets better, I didn't know whether he was talking about uh, him as a writer explaining it in a better way, or if the situation for the kids. I was always worried about the kids and the people around because they had such a cruel mind. And I don't even recall if he explained them as cruel-minded, or if that's my vivid imagination again. I don't
So,
recall that, but
so Jane, on a side note, when this was going on, did you have access to all of the book yet, or where does this playing? Did you have it all with you, the whole story? Do you know what I mean? I was wondering, some people might be tempted to skip ahead, but did you just have part of it? And
oh, you couldn't skip ahead anything because you would miss out so much details that speaks for the rest of the book. You have to follow it. You cannot just skip to the end and say, well, that's the story, because you would miss out of so much details and so much situation. There is something going on. There is situations going on throughout the whole book. There's different situation that the kids and the people is getting into that wouldn't explain what happened later.
it
Um,
sounds like every chapter was a couple books within themselves, actually.
yeah,
Just so much detail.
you
Yeah.
yeah, you would have to understand why these people act this way in the near end, or the beginning of the second book. Just to just you have to you have to know all the details that's coming first to understand the reactions of people and why they're doing that. That's the No, I don't think you can skip anything. You cannot skip one chapter.
It sounds like a book that'd be a
But
pleasure to read a few times through. I mean, wow.
I would read it
but
again and
Jane got the book serialized. Sorry, Jane. I was just saying you got the book serialized to an extent. You got the bulk of it in the beginning, but it wasn't finished. And then you had to wait for installments after that. And you were wondering what was going to happen next. It was a bit like Dickens. His stories were published weekly and monthly in publications, and people would have to wait to see how the end came. Well, I wasn't like Dickens, who had loads and loads of readers, but I had one in Norway, and she had to wait until I finished it to find out how it ended. And then I wanted to know from her, does this work? Jane, does this work? Does it work?
They call that a cliffhanger here, Sean. In these states, they
yeah,
call
and
that a cliffhanger. You gotta wait for the.
Larry, with my Arthurian soul, can you imagine how impatient I was?
Oh, good Lord! I wouldn't want to be around you. I would have taken a
Oh,
vacation. Yeah, I can imagine how you were.
I
An
called
excited, nervous wreck.
times. I was so worried, and when I came, there is a part in the book when Dara is going out to the universe and to a different to a spaceship where they're serving food, where he didn't know how they did it, how they got the food, so he was sort of waiting for the food. I am. This is sitting very deeply in my head, and I was thinking, oh my God, I need to call Sean and ask him, how is he coming up with these ideas? What's going on in your head? How is this
Yeah,
possible? It was,
amazing
yes, because
consciousness.
it was sort um, it made sense. It made perfect sense. I could
Mhm.
vividly imagine how you can really do that. You can get to the point where,
Well, it was a play on quantum physics. But the idea is that about quantum physics, we only know so little on Earth. But on other planets, particularly in Borea, which is they're the people. They're also being invaded. Well, they're being attacked by the Zerds, and they actually need Dara's help because he's got the intuition that they lack. They've got the weapons and the science and so on and so forth, and they've got the, as I say, the quantum physics, but they're so advanced in it, it's no longer referred to as quantum physics. It's called a Risch field, which I just imagine as an advanced understanding of quantum physics. So they're able to produce food on the table by just actually imagining it, essentially. That's the best way I can describe it for the moment. But I need to backtrack for a moment. You asked, Larry, about the time scale. Well, it's set in the present day, but there are aspects of space travel and therefore time travel. And then there is an episode involving, I can't say too much about this because it's towards the end, but it's a wormhole and what kind of things can happen in a wormhole, and can you travel through time, and perhaps you can, but I better say no more than that because I'll be telling too much. So time scale, yes, set in the present day, but there are ups and downs through time.
Did you ever find yourself when writing this book? Because I know somebody that I really admire, Eric von Däniken, speaks about this on the books he's written. Did you ever find yourself after writing part of it going back and reading it and going, wow, did I write that? I mean, did you ever find yourself just in that zone, in those days that you were on and just, you would just whip out a chapter or whip out a few chapters and then you'd be like, wow, did I do that?
There were
Didn't it
times
just
when
like it came?
I was writing it yeah, sorry. There were times when I was writing it that I said, oh, this is going nowhere. This is going crazy. I'll never make a story out of this. It's just an exercise. I cannot see it eventually ending up as something coherent to read. And I might leave it for a while and come back and do a little bit more. And at one stage, I had left it for a considerable period. And I came back and I started rereading it, what I'd already done. And yeah, there were a few bits. And I said, well, that's not bad. Yippee, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, there are bits to change, there are bits to revise, there are bits to tidy up. But I said, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a nice one. Yeah, and I did. Yeah, I had those moments, and if I did leave it aside for a while, I got that kind of sense of excitement about it. Though, is that the beginning of the book is kind of rather is typical, typical kind of alien invasion. In fact, the description I gave at the beginning, uh, I was I had I thought long and hard about changing because sometime after that movie, Independence Day. You know Independence Day?
Yeah.
Independence Day
Yeah, the movie came to mind as Jane was describing that feeling.
yeah.
Yeah, I just thought of that
The
movie a
opening
few
is
minutes ago, in fact, when Jane was talking about the
yeah.
coming.
The opening is very like Independence Day with these massive spacecraft appearing over Earth. And as I said, I had written it before I saw the movie, and then I became a little bit disturbed by it. But after that, the story is completely and utterly different from Independence Day. It's just the opening situation. And I said, right, maybe I should change it. But how many ways can you have an alien invasion? I didn't want
That's about
the
it.
day of the yeah, I didn't want the day of the body snatchers or something like that.
Yeah,
I
the
just
day
needed
that
to have a clean, yeah, a clean sweep of Earth by aliens. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, that's your typical way of doing it, all these spaceships. But after that, the story is completely and utterly different. So just in case anybody was put off by the first few pages with these giant spacecraft, just know it has nothing to do with Independence Day, and the story is completely different after that. It's just simply, that's it. That's the opening part to get established that your Earth has been invaded. There you go.
Now, what other way is there to really do it? No, I agree. I mean, there's no other way to do it. You have to have that initial shock and that initial beginning, and then take it wherever you want to take it as a writer. I can see that, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking of the story, how it starts with the aliens and all of the hidden messages, as you said, Sean, and the crystals and the meditations. What I see as a meditation, because it's concentration on something, um, and what the story is really telling. Well, it could be go both ways. If you like aliens and spaceships and all of this stuff, but it's as you said, it's telling people what kind of skills we have deep within us and what we can achieve just by a belief system, and also um, by quieting your mind and find within yourself what you're capable of. It's hitting something deep within me as a human being on Earth, and the connection with the universe, and what I think of as a fact, that you have to be pretty arrogant if you're thinking that in the vastness of cosmos, the universe, in galaxies, we are the only and superior intellectual beings. I call that arrogance. And I think I learned so much from reading that book. I was into stuff that I have never been thinking about. So I think that was pretty amazing, delivering all that to me.
Yeah, I can
Thank
definitely
you, Jane.
tell now, Jane, where it's, yeah, and kudos to you, Sean, because I can really tell, Jane, that this really was a big inspiration to you, and a lot of your knowledge and wisdom that you share with the people in the group as an admin and with me and others. It seems like this book was so thought provoking, yet it didn't make up your mind for you. You know what I mean? It took you where you wanted to go and helped you figure out what you needed to figure out. And I can really see that now, how big of an inspiration this book probably was to you, and probably don't even realize quite fully yet.
It
Well, it
took
was an adventure for
my
me as well because I never knew where the book was going. It was, to be honest, the eventual completion of the book just left me stunned because when I started it, I never saw it ending up where it did. Uh, as I said, there were times when I felt like I'm not writing this book. I'm just dictating it. Yeah, I'm using my basic abilities and facilities and so on, but somehow or other, this book is dictating itself. I don't know whether I even have control over it. It's just simply, it's happening as it happens. It's evolving bit by bit, and it won't go any faster. I want to get through it, but it just dragged on and on and on and on and on. But yet, okay, it came the day it was finished. I might point out one more small thing, incidentally, for uh, any, let's say, female listeners, that because I've only mentioned Parrot, who's a female from a distant planet, but females are very, very prominent in the story. Now, the main character is Dara, and being a boy, he has several other friends who are boys. But there are two girls in the group as well, called Emer and Aoife. And I would say Aoife is a very important character in the story because along the way she develops some powers as well. And then they deal with a planet called Borea, where all the leaders are female and men are struggling for emancipation. Men have been put down for years. It's all female leadership there. So just a small point just to throw in.
Gotta love that. You gotta love that. And Sean, you were talking about not knowing where the story was going to go, and I joined Jane mentioned that, but it had to have been a real trip as an author writing it, not knowing where it was going to go. That I can't imagine how exciting, fun, yet maybe frustrating, but yet just really riveting at times that was, not knowing where your own story was going to go. That's got to be just incredible. What an experience, huh?
Well, most of what I've written, I know exactly where it's going. I know the outline, I know the conclusion, and all I have to do is fill in all the bits in the middle. But this was a completely different experience. As I said, it just dictated itself. I felt like I was just the conduit for it or something like that. I'm not trying to be pretentious in any way. The very reverse. I'm just trying to say I ended up putting the story together, but it was just as much a mystery to me how it was going to end as to any potential reader.
And very mystery.
Yeah, it's exciting hearing you talk about it.
I remember when I was waiting for the end of the book, and he said, I had a very special experience, and I think the book is going somewhere. I was like thinking that maybe I will wait for another year, or I didn't know how long to wait for his ideas to come up. And there was a point where we were discussing the book as a child, as a baby, that Crystal was a baby. Born a beautiful story. All of a sudden it stopped up and was growing, and you didn't know how to um, make this child grow. Sort of, you didn't know what to teach this child. It was like,
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah, and you didn't
That's
know
a good way of putting it, Jane.
what to give this child and what this child was giving you.
That's a very good way of putting it. I have to mention too, Larry, that I might never have finished the book but for Jane, because to be honest, I'd lost interest in it, felt I'd never get anywhere with it. I was quite desperate about it. I was going to put it aside, but she had a read of it and she encouraged me to carry on and finish it. So, thank you, Jane.
Yeah, great job, Jane, for staying on. I mean, everybody needs a good woman to do that. Which reminds me, Sean, last thing I did want to ask you to is, or ask you, Sean, is when you were in those frustrating moments, did you ever have a fleeting thought of rushing an ending? Did you ever think, oh God, I'm just going to make something up and end it, or you know what I mean? Did you ever think about forcing something ever, even for a fleeting thought?
Yeah, well, as I said, I'd gone down a certain road and I brought so many things about, and like for instance, apart from the actual physical aliens, this is important actually. Again, I can't say too much about this because it would spoil the story, but there's a twist, and let's say the aliens are not what we think they might be.
Okay.
And there's something actually nastier behind them. And suddenly, all the nice people in the story are confronted by something hideous. Something so powerful and hideous. And, you think maybe this is the end of the story, but I've just taken it a stage further because there's another aspect to it. And then having created that aspect, I said, oh my God, what have I done? How the hell am I going to get out of this? Do I go back and cut the story short And I said, no, because I don't think that's satisfactory. It's too kind of ordinary. This story needs that something else. But having created the something else, I didn't know how to get rid of it. I didn't know how to defeat it. How are they going to deal with this? It's too much for them.
It was too
They're
much.
already defeated by this. Sorry, Jane?
No, I was thinking about it was too much for me. I felt like you were creating me. I've never felt so frustrated with emotions before, and it was all the specter of it. It was like I had to get to know my own feelings in every kind of way, you know, the sorrow, the grief, the worrying, the sadness, the happy moments, and everything. I had to feel all this, and I was so. Um, I had to look into emotions that in a way that I have never done before. I got to know myself better in the way of reading the book, and from that scary things you were talking about now, and going to to the start when you said to me, I thought these kids had strange names, and I saw nothing English to it. So that's also, you said something about the names of the kids.
Oh, the names of the kids? Well, some of them are very Irish names, like Emer and Aoife, Dara, very Irish names. But, well, Perth was I had to come up with something different for an alien from a far distant galaxy. Um, is that what you mean?
Yes, that also. I'm thinking about you being Irish, growing up in Ireland. It's an island and it's surrounded by sea, the element of water. And I was thinking about just coming up with lots of ideas here. The old ways, the history, and how you see the nature and animals and yeah, stuff like that. It has
The
to be something
elementals.
in you
Yeah.
that is very adventurous.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so I was so puzzled about your mind and how it was working.
Well,
With
so
all the
so am I, Jane.
There's another book in issue, guys, talking about the story of Sean both writing this and Jane waiting, waiting to figure out how this was going to end and the emotions and the twists and turns you guys took the whole way through. I mean, that to me in itself is a great story.
it was like a pregnancy. It was
It
just
was actually, yeah.
A long pregnancy, huh?
yeah.
A very long, 4-year pregnancy, yeah.
Yeah, wow. One hell of a labor, though. One hell of a relief, I bet, to get to the end. I can only imagine. I can't wait to find out for myself. I'm just amazed.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was such a relief, really, to get it finished. Oh, hard to explain that. Because quite honestly, it was a bit like an albatross around my neck for years. I mean, part of me wanted to stop, and part of me just couldn't. It was just there and had to be finished. But I said, when is this going to be finished? It just drags on and on and on and on. And there are new dimensions creeping into it all the time. And how am I going to wrap them all up? How am I going to resolve this issue, all these issues? How can I make it plausible and so on? But I can only say, I'll give one little hint. This story goes back to the beginning of time and back to the present day again.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
and now even further, I see the ending in the book and the way you describe it, it's really very stunning. I have to stop and think because the way you describe your relief of having the story told and having all this. You couldn't stop. You had to keep going. It feels like being in a birth, like in a delivery of a child. You cannot stop it. You cannot hold it back. You have to go all the way. And the hardest part is the end of it. And
Oh,
then you have,
definitely.
yeah. So it's lots of male and female energy here
I suppose, yeah.
in
Well,
all.
as I say, I had quite a bit of work to do when I was wondering how is this going to be resolved, and then, as I say, I had my moment of inspiration, and I knew it was exactly the ending I needed. But having said that, I still had quite a bit of work to do in between. But at that point, it all fitted together. I knew it was okay. I could proceed with confidence now.
Yeah, I had two final questions, and Sean, you just answered one of them for me about how once you knew that you had the ending. I mean, you knew you had work to do, but you were zoned in on that. And my other question is, as a writer and an artist, have you sat and ever read your finished product all the way through? I know you probably went over this a million times while you were writing it, but have you ever relaxed yourself and read your book, read both of them, the finished products?
Well, before I put it up on Amazon, I'd say I must have gone through it about 4 times because I just wanted to eliminate all possible mistakes. Impossible to do 100%, but I went as far as I could possibly go. So I ended up, no, I didn't actually read it, I suppose, in a relaxed way then, but I did read it, as I say, about 4 times, checking for errors because I was self-editing in that sense. Um, but I have taken a look at pieces of it since, but I must actually, it's probably a year since I've looked at it now because it's just over a year since I launched it on Amazon. So maybe I should take a look at it again in a more relaxed manner.
That's
In
good.
editing it, yeah, definitely I went over and over and over and over and over again, and that's inclined to bore you to death because you're too uptight and you're, as I say, looking for all the flaws and so on and so forth, and that's
Well,
it.
I'm just amazed, and I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show tonight. And it's been a real pleasure, and I've just been excited to hear the two of you talk about both you writing it, Sean, of course, and Jane, what you were feeling like listening to it. And Sean, it's been a real pleasure to have you on, and I can't thank you enough. And it's like I told Jane when she showed me just the covers of both those books. The covers of those struck me innately. I just got this feeling of truth to it, and just really a deep. There must be a deep story involved here, and I don't know. And I'm sure once I read it, it'll tie that together. But I thank you both. Thank you, Sean, for writing it, and Jane, thank you for turning me on to it.
Thank you for talking to me, Larry. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And just when you mentioned the covers, just thanks to a friend of mine, Sean O'Hanrahan, and a colleague of his who produced the covers on a suggestion I made to them. But they did it. They did the covers even better than I could have wished. So
Yeah, I've got to
praise to
say
them.
one last thing on the covers real quick. It was funny because when Jane first showed me it was funny, and I know she'll remember this. She showed me the red one, and I looked at it and I go, "Oh my God, that looks riveting." Then I said to her, "Man, I could only imagine if that was in a blue color." And then she says, "Well, hang on," and she sent me the other. She sent me the second book, and it was blue, and I'm like, "Oh my God, okay." I knew right then and there it was meant to be. But yeah, Jane, really thank you so much too, and much love to your friend Sean for designing that cover. I
He did a
mean,
wonderful job.
gladly give him a shout out, and a wonderful job. And Jane, again, I'll never forget that night when you showed me that cover, and then the blue one followed by it after I said that.
Yeah, you were about the same level of enthusiasm that I was when I talked about the book when I got to read it. You were like over the clouds, over the top. uh, yeah, it's really amazing, and I'm so glad I met Sean, and it was a special moment that also because it all had to do with pictures of the nature, which I so it's a funny way how you get to know people.
That's true.
Synchronicity. Synchronicity. Well, Sean, we won't keep you any longer, but would you let everybody out there know one last time before we go where they can find your book? And I know that you had mentioned possibly altering the title to it again. If you could just touch on that real quick, and we
Yeah,
can wrap it
well,
up.
well, it's called Alien Invasion Book 1, Alien Invasion Book 2, and they're available on Amazon Kindle. And some people feel they have to have a Kindle device to use an ebook, but they don't. All they have to do is join Amazon, and you can download a free Kindle. The books are quite cheap. I think it's the first book is I think it's $199, and the second book I think it's $3.99. I just I'm confused by because it's different in different currencies.
Sure.
But as I say, they're quite inexpensive. And as I said, even if you don't have a Kindle, join Amazon, download a free Kindle, and you can get the books. I don't. I'd like to put up the link,
Sure.
but off the top of my head, I just don't. Can't remember it, and I would need to look it up. Do you have it handy, Jane, by chance?
Um, I don't have the link here, but I will post it onto the Pleiadians on
Mhm. Yeah, and
um,
we'll post it. This will go out to lots of groups, and we'll post the link with. We'll definitely Jane and I'll get a hold of the link, and we'll post it, Sean, with this broadcast, and also, okay, you're talking. You are referring to the link to be able to download the Kindle, right?
Yeah, but you don't need the link anywhere because if anybody's interested, all they have to do is look up Amazon and search for Alien Invasion by Sean Courtney, Courtney, and that'll come up. And in
That's
fact,
yeah.
they don't even need to look up Amazon, even if they Google uh, just Alien Invasion by Sean Courtney, it'll still come up. So it's very
Awesome. That
simple.
simplifies it, huh, Jane?
yeah, that's the way you can do it, and it's very easy. And you and me, Larry, we had some counting of how many groups within the Pleiadian group, and we sort of found out that it was it 28. So
Yes.
a lot of typing to do, or gluing, or putting it out there,
Copy and pasting. Yeah, absolutely.
copy paste.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's easy
Absolutely.
to share and easy to get onto, and we will do as much help as we possibly can to
Oh,
publish it.
for sure, for sure. So, Sean, I guess, and then I keep saying one last thing, and we'll let you go. Where, if anybody's interested in maybe contacting you, is that something? I mean, do you have a public email address, or is there somewhere maybe on Facebook they could find you if they had a question? If that's something you felt comfortable with?
Oh yeah, I have no problem about that. I'd be very pleased. Um, well, I'm on Facebook. I think it's Sean.Courtney.12. I think.
Yeah, on
My
Facebook. Yeah, yeah.
email address is CHAUNSWE@live.com. CHAUNSWE@live.com. It's kind of a French sounding way of saying Sean C. Sean C. CHAUNSEE at live.com. And
Got it.
is that enough?
That is definitely enough. And thank you very much, Sean, for coming on. And Jane, just real quick, and we'll get out of here. Where can they find you on Facebook, or where can they find you on the internet if somebody wants to talk to the lovely Jane or ask her a question about this?
You can find me on my personal profile, Jane Hermstad, and you can also find me on my group. That's Love and Kindness Worldwide, and you can find me as an admin on the Pleiadian group. Yeah, that's just search for Pleiadians. So, and I think also if you contact Larry and Sean, you can find me there. And yeah, I'm everywhere. So I'm easy to find.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And as always, yours truly, Rockin' Larry Locken. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Leah Shapiro's Pleiadians group, the Fringe Thinkers. You can also find me at one of the various regional Pleiadian groups. And I'd like to thank everybody in the vastness of the cosmos for listening to this broadcast. And thank you to my co-host Jane Hermstad in the land of the all-time midday sun, and Sean Courtney from Ireland. Much love to you both, and much love to everybody out there. Namaste.